This is Hey Heart 143 with Natalie Tavidian. 143 means I love you. Together, we're learning to love ourselves and stay in love no matter what life throws at us. We are constantly evolving, changing, growing emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And we have to remember to check in with our own heart as we're propelled forward. When you love your own heart, you heal better, you do better, and you live a more fulfilled life. A really big theme that's been coming up with all of my guests and subjects that have been coming up for me for Hey Heart 143 has been finding your authentic self. And I'm so excited to have met today's guest, Carley Schweet. We were introduced via social media. I was looking for a boundaries expert, and I'm so blessed to have met her. She's so grounded and has such great advice for people out there who are people pleasers. Carley talks to me about being able to say no and being able to say no without feeling guilty. In her book, Boundaries with Soul, Carley speaks about external and internal boundaries, which you'll hear about in this interview. And just so many types of boundaries and ways to set them that I had never really thought of before. In her book, Carley writes that this is for people pleasers who feel guilty for making time for themselves, and then they get anxious. And she shares her self-love journey with us, her self-care journey with us. Carley quit her corporate job back in 2015 when she was living in New York and working in the fashion industry in a job that seemed so magical to so many people, but she realized this wasn't aligned with herself. So she is now a self-care coach and the author of Boundaries with Soul, living just outside the Washington area. And this whole topic of boundaries is definitely something that I have struggled with in my lifetime, because I am definitely a people pleaser who felt that guilt every time I said no. And it's so interesting. Carley goes deep into how do you know if you are a people pleaser. So take a listen to learn a little bit more about her journey, and I hope this inspires you. Hey Carley, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Natalie?
I am doing so wonderful. I'm super excited to connect with you. I just got your book in the mail a few days ago, and I've been reading it a couple times, and I love it. Boundaries with Soul.
Thank you. Thank you. That makes me so happy to hear you're loving it. It feels like my baby.
Yeah, and I want to read a little bit about you right here in the back. You write, Carley once worked in an intense corporate world of New York City, spending her workdays people-pleasing and her nights and weekends reeling with sleepless anxiety. She struggled with low self-worth and poor relationships. Do you feel like so many people reached out to you after you wrote this and said that they can totally relate with that spread too thin and people-pleasing?
Yeah, the messages, they still come in, even though my book's now over 2 years old. And when I do workshops and read from the book, or, people reach out to me over Instagram or email, it's always, wow, this is exactly what I'm feeling. And I never realized how my inability to say no was causing it. And so it's been really, really cool to see people kind of have that moment of awakening and awareness, and I love that my book prompted that for them.
And I see so many similarities with my past, corporate life. I used to work in news, and it was in my early 20s where I always had to say yes, 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 because if you weren't saying yes, somebody else was going to say it. So you end up working late hours and coming in early in the day, and at the time, I felt like there's really no way around it. You can't say no, you're going to lose that next opportunity. So when was it for you where you realized, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to say no?
Yeah,
without
that's a really good question. Yeah. Oh, man. Well, the guilt it subsides, right? There's still sometimes that guilt, but it does get a lot better with time. And for me, the big turning point was I was at my corporate fashion job, you know, a job that a lot of women and girls would love to have, great free clothes, killer discounts. And I was going to the bathroom, and I stood up, and, you know, obviously the stall is locked, and I started having an anxiety attack because I just felt so completely overwhelmed and couldn't communicate. I was shutting down. I couldn't breathe. And it was in those moments that I really realized that something needed to change for me. This wasn't how I wanted to live my life. And I walked back into the office after I pulled myself together, and I looked around and realized I didn't want to be any of those people. You know, if I were to continue working there for the next year, 2 years, 5 years, I didn't want to have anybody's role that they currently held. And that was a huge turning point for me, was why am I doing this if none of my goals would ever be aligned with what's being offered here.
Was it a childhood dream that you felt like you had to hold on to?
Well, I wouldn't say it was a childhood dream, but I went to school for apparel merchandising and business, and it was always something I was extremely interested in. I had such a natural passion for, and moving to New York after college and working in the fashion industry was just a natural next step for me. And I did feel on some level like I owed it to my parents, you know, who footed my college tuition very generously and helped me move to New York. But then as soon as my health really started taking a turn, anxiety and exhaustion and sleepless nights, they were fully supportive of me stepping out of that role and out of that culture and pursuing whatever really brought me joy.
So then what was the next step when you said, okay, I'm going to step away from this? And was that scary?
Oh, it was absolutely terrifying. And so it was 2015, and in January 2015, I enrolled at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, still working full-time, like putting money aside every month, because I know now at this point, I'm like, I need to get out. I need an exit plan. Like, New York's not a city that you can just like move out of. It's really hard. A lot of money's going to rent every month. Like, how are you even going to save to move? So I started putting money aside and started IIN. And with the coaching program through IIN, you can start taking clients about 6 months through your program. So by summer 2015, I had paid off my coaching tuition. I had started working with clients, and I was like, okay, I've got to take the leap. So I quit my job in September, my corporate job. Total shock to everyone. Not a shock to me. I'd been planning for it. And
is it because on the outside it looked so perfect?
Yes, of course, because I'm a people pleaser, or was, and was, you know, making sure I was showing up, doing the best I could do, you know, making sure everything was taken care of, showing up with a smile. So making that jump, even sitting down with my boss, like emailing her saying, hey, I need to talk to you, was terrifying to me. Like I had nightmares about it leading up to it.
Isn't that the hardest, like that first step?
It's the worst. Yeah. I mean, like, my palms are getting sweaty just thinking about it right now.
Sorry.
No worries. And she was so supportive and so understanding. So I was like, okay, I can totally do this. Quit my job, coaching full time. 2 months later, I look at my boyfriend, who were living together at that point, and I was like, hey, do you want to move across the country? And he said, yeah. And we moved to Seattle, and the rest is history. So it was a big year for me.
That's so beautiful. This was all in 2015.
2015. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I underlined something here in your book, and very early on you write about finding your authentic, truest, highest self. And I feel like that keeps coming up for me with different people I'm talking to that practice yoga and meditation
And all forms of mindfulness is that this theme of authenticity and kind of getting to that core. And
yes.
I want you to talk a little bit about that, because I feel like in this day and age with social media and with everyone kind of trying to appear so perfect and like you are, that people pleaser, how do you get to that core?
Yeah,
how do you find out who you are?
I know, right? It sounds
and
so
be
easy
authentic.
to read a chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's work. It's work, right?
It's totally work. This whole process is work. And I like to equate it to like peeling back the layers of an onion. And you slowly just peel layer by layer by layer, and finally you're at your core, and that's who you are. That's your authentic self. And I have goosebumps thinking about this memory, but I remember one time when I was sitting in New York before I had discovered IIN, but knew that I wanted to change my career path drastically. I knew I wanted to be helping other people care for themselves with food, and at the time my focus was food, and make more time for themselves, because that had changed my life. And there was a moment I was researching on my laptop. It was a Saturday night. I was just captivated by what I was reading about online, about all the various, routes I could go. And it was like this moment came over me, like this feeling came over me in this moment where it was like everything aligned. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to be doing. Like I felt like I could see crystal clear for the first time in a long time. So I canceled my Saturday plans, that was difficult for me, of course, as a people pleaser. I made up some lie, I'm sure, because also common people pleasing behavior, white lies at the last minute. And just completely felt so on that path. So in those moments, like when you are looking to get back in touch with your authentic self, like pay attention to the cues and the subtle signs that your body feels. Like you get goosebumps when you think about something, or something keeps repeatedly showing up in your life. Look at it and wonder why. What's it trying to tell you, and how is that going to lead you to discovering your authentic self? And I always encourage people to sit down and reflect on what's most important to them. Is it your job? Is it your family? Your friends? Is it your yoga practice? Whatever it is, reflect on that. Get super clear without any input from other people, because that's a really great starting point to figuring out what's most important to you.
And I like what you say about that. Like, don't just go jump for advice from others, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, what's important to me? Can you tell me?
Yeah, exactly. You painted such a beautiful picture. I could just picture your heart opening up in that moment and a big smile, going, "Wow, this is my purpose."
Yeah, it was a really cool moment. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. And we all have the opportunity to find those moments. We just have to get quiet enough and allow ourselves to be curious enough and kind of just start digging around.
Do you feel like you had to just rest that day? Because I think when people get overwhelmed, they just keep going and going, and they think the answer is going to be there. But I feel like when you are overwhelmed, don't quit, right? Just kind of take a step back, rest a little.
Yes, exactly. Allow your mind to get quiet and to allow your body to just kind of digest everything that's going on. And taking a step back can really bring clarity, but it can also bring a lot of insight. Like the title for my book came when I was getting a massage. Like it wasn't when I was sitting at my computer, like, what am I going to name this book? It was when I was taking a step back from the process and just allowing my mind to kind of get curious and do a little digging and take me where it wanted.
I love that. The title of Carley's book, by the way, is Boundaries with Soul, a guide to regaining control of your time and truest values. in parentheses and with an exclamation mark, without feeling guilty. I love what you said about canceling your Saturday plans, because that's what, when I think of boundaries, I'm thinking setting a boundary for myself and maybe someone that's not good for me, but you talk about all the different types of boundaries, and one of them that I loved is sort of like what you said about canceling your plans on Saturday, is having this boundary like, okay, every day at this time I'm at the gym, no matter what. That's a boundary with myself. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that, like that type of boundary, or the different types of boundaries that we should be using?
Yes, absolutely. I think when people think of boundaries, they always think of the external boundaries, which those are boundaries that we have with other people. Mm-hmm. So telling a friend, I can't make it, or telling your boss, I'm not available to email on the weekends. But having those internal boundaries, like I'm going to the gym from 6 to 7 a.m., no matter what it takes, like that's a commitment to myself. That's a boundary. And canceling my Saturday plans, yes, it involved someone else, but it was also really honoring what I needed in that moment. And that to me is setting a strong internal boundary of honoring your energy and what your body is really requiring in that moment. So often when people get kind of tripped up with setting boundaries, I encourage them to start with the internal boundaries. How can you modify your behavior that doesn't involve anyone else directly to further take back your power and feel a little bit more rested?
Yeah, because then it's a lot easier for a people pleaser to say, I have an appointment with myself, than trying to think of an excuse of why you can't make an event, right?
Totally. I always joke, like, people will say, like, how do I know if I'm a people pleaser? And I'm like, well, how many white lies have you told to get out of things lately? And, I get it. Like, things come up. We had to reschedule on Friday because I wasn't feeling great. But in the past, I would have, like, pushed through that, probably shown up and been half asleep. And then I would have made excuses and white lies for the rest of the weekend because I would have felt just so drained. So learning and like taking note of the white lies that you're telling people to get out of things is a really good indicator that you're taking on too much, and specifically where you're taking on too much.
I could picture that, like you and that go lifestyle, like to add on to a busy industry, the city as well. I bet that played a huge part.
Yes. I mean, the energy of New York is just, everyone's out for blood. Not really, but, people are highly ambitious. They are energetic. They are motivated and, are working to make it in the city that never sleeps. And even now when I go back to visit, I feel like after 2 days, I'm like, I'm good. I have had enough of this place, and my body just responds to it very differently than it used to.
So what advice do you give your clients who are in this cycle, and where do you tell them to begin? Well, if they are in this like go cycle and you just need to slow down, but then your job is a high stress job, like where do you start?
That's a really good question, and I think so many people
I want
are
to throw
stuck.
in. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw in just a quick, like a personal experience with that guilt, because you get into the cycle. I used to feel guilty for asking for a mental health day. I didn't even know that was a thing when I was in my early 20s. And I would cover like a really trying news story that was extremely emotional and it played a toll on me, right? And then the next day you have to go in and push through. And journalists don't have the same support system as like medical doctors do or police officers. So I had to ask for that mental health day. Like I just need a break to breathe. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there to sort of paint a picture of like this go lifestyle and the cycle that people get in with high stress jobs.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And journalists especially. And I mean, I can only imagine just chasing the story and following leads and how emotionally and physically exhausting it has to be. So kudos to you for taking the time the next day, because a lot of people wouldn't. And I think, you know, it comes down to really being your own advocate and not being so scared that you're going to lose your job if you ask for a day off or ask to leave, you know, 2 hours early because you want to. First of all, it doesn't even matter what you're going to do. It's not your boss's business what you're going to do.
But that's a difficult conversation for people.
Totally. So, you know, you can say something like, hey, is it cool if I come in a little bit early tomorrow? I'd like to leave a little bit earlier in the day because I have some things I'd like to get to. Always offer to somehow, like, quote, make up for what you're taking. So if you're asking to leave early, like, ask if you can come in a little bit earlier, and is that okay with them? And your boss will either say, yeah, sure, no problem, or it's not going to work for me, or go ahead and leave early. Don't worry about coming in earlier in the morning. You know, but you're never going to know unless you ask. And I heard a really great quote that I've used quite a few times now, and I can't remember who told me, but it was, you're hired for your talent and not your stamina. And reframing your workday to, I'm here because I'm talented, not I'm here because I can sit at my desk the longest, is a big difference. You know, if you're not sure where to start with setting boundaries or like getting out of that go lifestyle, like, just start by asking for what you need, because I know it seems hard, but that's the only way you're going to really figure out where you stand.
I love that. Just ask for it.
Yep. You
Simple.
Just got to try.
Simple, but we don't do it.
We don't do it. Nope.
What kinds of boundaries are you practicing right now?
Oh my gosh, girl, so many boundaries. So I am 15 weeks pregnant as of this past Monday. So,
that's so exciting.
Thank you. And
baby number one, right?
Baby number one, yes. So this is like completely new territory. And it has brought up so many lessons that I've learned in the past in different situations that they just keep coming back, right? And they'll teach us something in different ways every time. So I'm really working on setting boundaries with unsolicited advice. That's been a really huge one that pretty much any pregnant woman or anyone going through something can relate to. Like, oh, when I was pregnant, I did X, Y, Z. You should totally do this. Or I had someone tell me exactly how my labor would go and what it would look like and how long I'd be in labor for. And I was literally like, my jaw was on the floor. And
how do you stop someone?
I just like, oh, well, with this pregnancy, I have such a shorter amount of patience and overall energy. So I've gotten really good at being like, well, you know, that certainly could happen for some people, but I'm really open to whatever happens for me because we're certainly all unique. Like, I get right to it now and set those boundaries and make it extremely clear that I'm not open for your unsolicited advice. I will certainly ask people if I need opinions, and I have, but if I'm not asking, I don't want to hear it. So that's one that I'm working on a lot right now.
That's a tough one. People always jump in when someone's having a baby or getting married or graduating college or whatever it is. It's so true. I mean, I've been that person multiple times. You know, it's fun and it's exciting. So on the flip side, like, if you're that person who feels excited about giving advice and opinions, like, I've been trying really hard now to just say, oh, can I give you some advice? Or like, would you like to hear my opinion on that? And then that person has the chance to say yes or no.
And then I can go forward and say what's on my mind. Or like, are you open to suggestions?
I like that. That's so important because you want people to kind of digest their own emotions and what they're going through and make their own choices unless they are open to it.
Exactly. And some people might not be open to it, and that is A-okay.
And it's not difficult for you now as, what do you call yourself, a recovering people pleaser? It's not.
Yes.
Do you still feel guilty when you're like, listen, I'm not here for your advice, and much nicer words?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the person. If someone's a repeat offender, I don't feel bad anymore. Like, come on, we've done this before. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. If it's someone that might be like, not, I don't know, it's unique situation by situation, and the guilt definitely comes up. Like, I'm great at setting boundaries in my marriage now. I don't feel guilty about it. I'm great at setting boundaries in my work. I don't feel guilty about it. But now this whole new idea of motherhood comes in, and it's like I have to relearn everything and, you know, look at motherhood and pregnancy with the same lens of confidence that I have in my marriage or in my work. And so learning to shift that lens or that mindset of boundaries to this new adventure definitely comes with more guilt. But I know over time it will get more comfortable.
And we're constantly changing, right?
Totally. Boundaries, yeah. Yep, and boundaries always change, and our needs always change, and our situations always change.
Mm-hmm. Carley, can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'd love to connect. I'm on Instagram. It's Carley, Carley_Schweet, which is SCHWEET. And then carleyschweet.com is my website. It has online self-care courses, tons of blog posts, lots of great resources for all things boundaries. And then my book, Boundaries with Soul, is available on Amazon.
And it's a wonderful book. I highly, highly recommend it for everyone. And I'll have
Thank you.
I'll have a link to it on my show notes. And Carley also has a self-care podcast called You Time.
Yes. The podcast is so fun, and it's been on hiatus due to my first trimester, but we are back and running as of August 5th, so I'm very excited.
Awesome, and it's so wonderful to connect with you, and this is the best part of starting the podcast, is just connecting with people who I never thought I'd connect with. So it was a pleasure chatting with you. And
likewise.
And I wish you all the best in your pregnancy and with everything.
Thank you. It was so great chatting with you, and I'm excited to share with your community.
Yeah, thank you, Carley.
If you enjoyed this episode, if this made some sort of an impact on your life, I would love to hear what you think. Head over to iTunes and leave me a review. And for those of you who have left me messages and phone calls and texts and reviews, thank you so very much. I am so very grateful for everybody listening to this podcast, and it just feels so amazing knowing that these stories are making a difference in somebody's life. That is the purpose of it. If you enjoyed listening to Carley, and if you're interested in any of her self-care courses, her website is carleyschweet.com, and if you use the code HeyHeart15, you get a discount on your course. So I'll have all of this in the show notes. Thank you again for spending time with me today. 143 means I love you. Tell your own heart I love you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.